recall from last week, we know that the mean falls in the center of a normal distribution. If we're trying to find each section to help us apply the empirical rule, since 68% fall within one standard deviation of the mean, using symmetry, we can cut that in half so that each one of these sections represents 34% of our data. Moving out, we know that two standard deviations encompass 95% of our data. So that 95%, we've already used 68%. That leaves 27% left over. That 27% covers these two regions. So when we fill in those two regions at 27% and cut it in half, that means that 13.5% are taken up individually in each of those rectangularish regions. Moving out, the 99.7% of the data falls within three standard deviations. If you take that 95% out, that means we're left with 4.7%, and that's for these two sections out here. So those two sections are 4.7% of your data. So if you divide that by 2, you get 2.35. And then, of course, as we move out, we have one little section here on each tail of the curve. Now, remember that the whole entire curve is 100% of our data. And the empirical rule talks about 97.7% falling with 99.7% of our data falling within three standard deviations of our mean. That leaves 0.3 left over. So that means 0.15% is on each tail of the distribution.